everyone, I'm Emily. Welcome back to another episode of Ventura Voices. I'm here today with Corporal David Curtis of the Ventura Police Department. And today we're going to talk about a large community concern. We're going to talk all about e-bikes, electric bicycles. Quick introduction of Corporal Curtis. He's been part of Ventura PD for about 16 years. He served in our traffic unit for nearly 7, and I've worked closely with him, and I know that he has a passion for public service, for educating our community, and for talking about traffic safety. Before we get started, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. My name's Dave Curtis. I was actually born and raised in Ohio, and I left for military service back in 2000. Did a 5-year stint in the Navy, and I actually was stationed in Port Hueneme for the last couple of years that I was in service. And me and a bunch of buddies, we'd spend a lot of time here in Ventura, and it seemed like a really kind of close-knit community. Reminded me a lot of home, just kind of the way that the city was kind of set up. And so I got into law enforcement back in 2006, and ultimately lateraled over here back in 2008. Worked patrol for a number of years and started seeing all of the things that I deal with on a normal basis. And the thing that impacted the community the most, in my opinion, was traffic. Your day-to-day run-ins, you're probably going to contact more people in a traffic environment as a police officer and affect the community in a greater sense in that capacity. Things that impact families in a longer term situation, in my opinion, were traffic crashes and the things that occur in traffic crashes, be it significant injuries and the impact that you have to take care of a loved one longer down the road, or the fatalities that exist in those situations. And so to me, the greater impact that I could make to a community to show my care and concern was to try to affect traffic collisions and just render a safer community.
So you are very experienced in traffic collision investigations, traffic enforcement, citing people for different traffic safety concerns. So you are a perfect person to talk about this issue today. We know that e-bike safety and enforcement has been a growing concern for our community. So we're going to dedicate this entire episode to that topic. So to start us off, can you very briefly explain the different classes of e-bikes, the different speeds, power, and safety requirements?
Yeah, I'll try to make it as brief as possible. The legislation hasn't really caught up with all of it yet, and people are constantly making new bicycles. So as a bicycle is concerned, we have 3 classes. You got class 1, which is your standard mountain bike with an electric motor that only assists when the rider's pedaling it. Class 2 e-bicycles are still just designed like a regular bicycle, pedal for propulsion and an electric motor. However, in this case, they actually have a throttle where they can function quite like a motorcycle. Class 1s and 2s are limited to 20 miles an hour, okay, whether you're pedaling or using the throttle. Class 3 bicycles are limited to 28 miles per hour per California statute, and you can only ride them if you're over the age of 16. Okay. And then you start moving into other things like motor-driven bicycles, motor-driven cycles, mopeds, and motorcycles. Once you start exceeding that 28 mile per hour barrier, you could really go down a rabbit hole on what's what there. So that's the gist for bicycles.
And for our community members who want to learn more about the specific classes of e-bikes, we actually have a dedicated webpage on our Ventura PD site all about e-bike safety requirements, etc. So that's where you can kind of learn more on this topic related to classes. What are some of the primary safety concerns associated with local e-bike usage? Anything that you've seen specifically?
Well, one of the biggest issues is, quite frankly, they get up to speed fast and they're quiet, like absolutely quiet. And so kids are not wearing appropriate safety gear, or they're wearing it loosely. So in other words, what I mean by that is they're not buckling their helmets, right? So, if you get into an impact of any kind, the helmet's just going to discharge from your head, go flying. Yeah, and then it's completely useless. So there's a safety concern. And with anybody else in the public, whether you're riding an e-bike or a standard bicycle, like the rules of the road apply to a bicycle same as they do a car, essentially, right? So you have to move in the proper direction as a car, okay? So if you're going east and you're headed eastbound in the west side of the roadway, like you're going the wrong way. And you appear out of nowhere. So cars exiting a driveway or another road, that's an issue, right? All those rules apply for bicycles, e-bikes, regardless. Not stopping at stop signs, and I know it's a little scary, but utilizing turn pockets when you want to make a left or right at an intersection, depending on where you are, using your hand signals. And if you don't know them, look them up. If you want to make a left turn, you extend your hand out. If you want to make a right turn, extend your, arm up with a right angle. All those sorts of things. And my opinion, bicycling is the progression of kids to move into driving, right? And that's the idea behind it in theory. And if you learn how to bicycle safely, it just makes you a safer driver.
Right.
Right? That's the progression, and that's what we want to try to teach our youth and render a safer community by getting all of those points across.
So in addition to electric bicycles, you briefly mentioned earlier motor-driven cycles, electric dirt bikes, motorcycles, all those different variations. We've also seen an increase in the usage of electric motorcycles or dirt bikes on our streets. Typically, they're manufactured by companies like common ones are Talaria or Suron, correct?
Yeah.
Those are not only considered vehicles, but they have different regulations than e-bikes. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit for us?
Yes. So there's no legislation currently that absolutely identifies them. But if you read into the works of what a motorcycle is or a motor-driven cycle and all the things I talked about with e-bicycles earlier, they don't have any pedals for human propulsion, right? These Surons and Talarias. They have 4,000 to 6,000 watt batteries, which if you do the rough math, 750 watts is 1 horsepower. You're looking at 5 and 6 and 7 horsepower.
And how fast is that? How fast can it go?
They can go 40 to 60 miles per hour. And I mean, a couple of the manufacturers tout their acceleration rate of like 5 seconds to top speed.
So you can get to 60 miles per hour in less than 5 seconds.
5 to 6 second time frame, yeah. And people that are riding these are 14-year-old kids.
Right.
With
no official training.
No road going experience, right. So the things that come into requirement for anybody riding these, right? DOT approved helmets. Like your motorcycle helmets, right? Because they're moving so fast. They need the impact attenuate, the safety foam and stuff like that in design. Licensing, okay? Most of these are designed they're the Tesla model of your CR 125s and 250s. If you got a dirt bike at home and you know what I'm talking about, like that's what these are. They're the Tesla to your Ford Focus. That's it. So, but people see them as they're electric, and it's like, well, it's electric, so it's no big deal.
Right,
but,
they think they're electric bikes.
Right. And, absent a human propulsion situation, or once they start exceeding that 30 miles per hour or even 28 miles per hour for class 3 bicycle, you're looking at a moped, right? Mopeds require class 2s or M2 licenses, right? It still requires a license.
So you need a license, you need registration,
Yep.
you need a license plate.
Yeah,
you need a helmet.
Get them license plated. You need a proper helmet for motorcycling. The Surons, Talaris, Segway's another manufacturer. They all bear a 17-digit VIN. When they were first building them, they were like a 15-digit VIN. Now they carry a full-on like DOT stamped VIN plate and the whole 9 yards. Some of them, well, I think they'd all meet like a red sticker requirement, so you could ride them annually off-road if you're in an off-road location, right? But the county of Ventura has none.
Right, off-road doesn't mean on sidewalks and bike paths.
Correct. Off-road means like dirt paths, BLM land up in like Mammoth area.
Right.
That's off-road, right? We're not talking about, like you said, like the sidewalks. And then we've got a few people riding these things on the bike paths. Like no motor vehicles on a bike path. If you wouldn't drive your car there, you shouldn't be riding these things there.
Right.
That's kind of an easy rule of thumb about it.
So we've also heard a lot of concerns about how the Ventura Police Department is enforcing this issue. I know that enforcement is really difficult. Yeah. It's difficult to go after a kid on an e-bike who might be riding recklessly if you're in a car or a patrol car or even on a police motorcycle, because a lot of safety issues come into play there if they decide to flee. Can you share a little bit what enforcement looks like for us?
So you and I have worked closely together for a number of steps leading up to the enforcement aspect of this because we understood the issue of knowledge, right? Like
right.
If people don't understand what they're setting their kids out into the world to ride, there's a little bit of I don't want to say ignorance, but I mean, in the sense that people are ignorant, but like they just don't know.
Right.
And so we tried to deal with that first and foremost. And then people made their own educated decision at that point to either get rid of them and get them something that the kids can ride, or something that's more safe, or make sure that the kids are outfitted properly. And we pushed that in a number of ways. We did it. We made the website for the department. We pushed it out on social media. We've even run around in an enforcement situation and we stop kids. We go to the schools, and we've literally set up around the schools, and just as the kids are coming into school, like, hey, here's a little bit of a nugget of information. Now, please practice accordingly. And then with the Surons and the Talarias, we've even given some people some significant conversations, contacted parents. And then here's your one chance at amnesty. Don't be seen back out on the road. And then, of course, we've had to step that up because we get some people that just continue to, bring them out into dangerous situations, dangerous settings, and put themselves and other people at risk.
So are we at a point now where we are taking more of a zero tolerance approach to enforcement? Can you share a little bit about what the citations look like? Do we impound bicycles? If you contact an underage rider, we call parents. What does that look like?
Yeah, so the Surons and the Talarias, they're off-highway vehicles or they're required registered vehicles, and every single one of them that we've come across so far has not been registered. There is no record of the vehicle whatsoever. So we're impounding them for registration issues. Sometimes we'll cite the rider for licensing issues. Sometimes we won't. It just depends. Mm-hmm. We understand that if we cite a juvenile, right, we cite a kid who's under 16 for a license issue, then that impacts their potential to get a license later on down the road. But what the registration side of things does is that it either forces the parent to get it registered, right? Or what a lot of people are doing, what we've been seeing, is they just sell it. They get rid of the bike.
The parents just straight up didn't know, and they get rid of it.
Right. They just sell the bike, the Serrano Talaria. They sell it outright, and then they're buying something like a Class 2 Super 73, which is perfectly fine. And I'm not pumping Super 73, but that's kind of, the common thing that we find
that people
start riding. As far as the fines are concerned, or the potential longevity that it has, like I said earlier, it could impact a kid's license or potential to get their license. If the kids panic and want to take off on us, then you're looking at the same things that you would get if we got into a pursuit with a car, right? You're looking at pursuit issues, you're looking at misdemeanor charges, you're looking at multiple years of required suspensions, so kids probably couldn't even get their licenses until they're 18, depending. And then worst case scenario, they try to take off and then they really injure themselves or worse. These aren't the things that we're looking for. We were all kids once, right? We get it. It's exhilarating. It's fun. If you've ever ridden a dirt bike, I totally understand. I ride a motorcycle daily for a living. Best thing since sliced bread, right? We understand. But at the same time, there's a safe way to go about this stuff and a reckless way to go about this stuff. And we just want the kids to be safe. That's it.
Beyond enforcement, I'll also share that we at Ventura PD are in the process of mapping out a full-fledged education campaign. Mm-hmm. That kind of goes hand in hand with enforcement. We want people to know what they're working with. And some of that education is going to look like, this podcast episode, some paid advertising, some information shared at community councils. We're actually going to host a community workshop coming up here in a few weeks. So we are taking a more proactive approach with education. So hopefully we see an impact with that as well. Can you share any recent successes you've seen with enforcement? A success story, perhaps? Maybe you stopped someone, you talked to the kid, they were really receptive, or you talked to parents. Can you share a success story, what that looks like?
Well, I've had a number of conversations with kids and with parents. Interestingly enough, most of the kids know what they're riding. Like, they know.
The kids know, the parents don't.
The kids know and the parents don't. And that's no dig on the parents. I'm a parent too. My kids probably wooled me a couple of times. It is what it is. But when you sit down and you explain it to parents, to families, most people are genuinely receptive and completely honest in the idea that they had no idea. Because legislation hasn't caught up. Because the definition of these things is just kind of like nobody really knows. And the development of these bikes is so rapid. It's the technical age, and so everything just turns over so quickly.
Right.
largely people are just receptive. And, if the kids are, under 17 years of age, the parents are like, okay. I've stopped a couple of kids who are, riding wheelies in places that they shouldn't be, and it's like, hey, dude, come on. Like, I get it. It's cool and you want to have some fun, but like, let's go have a chat with your mom and dad. And they're like, yeah, we did our homework and we'll have a talk to them about the whole wheelie situation. Because at the end of the day, like the steering mechanism of a two-wheeled vehicle is the front tire. So if it's up in the air, guess what? You're limited in your ability to do much of anything, especially if a risk presents itself. And people are generally receptive to that too. You talk to the kids like they know, hey, if I saw a guy on a motorcycle doing this, what do you think would end up happening? Oh, he'd probably take his bike and tow it and all this sort of stuff. So they get it, but at the same time, they're youth and they're trying to,
push the boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what we don't want is what will ultimately and inevitably end up happening is crashes, injured bodies, broken bones, you name it.
Right. We
don't need to see that. Your parents don't need to see that. Okay. Nobody wants to get a hospital bill like the ambulance. None of it needs to happen. Okay. And that's what we really want to push forward is that, look, these things are cool. We get it. It's a ton of fun. It's easier for mom and dad who are working and you got to get to school and all these other things that people buy these and the reasons for which they buy them for. But just be safe. That's all we want to do.
So you kind of just, answer my next question, but if you could share a message directly with parents of adolescents and teens who have e-bikes, what would that message be?
First and foremost, verse yourself in the rules of the road as they pertain to bikes. Because a lot of people are still of the rule of thumb that I need to ride into traffic so that I can see the car coming that's about to wipe me out. The reality of it is that the city of Ventura has done a really good job in establishing appropriate bike lanes. So you're relatively separated from the cars, okay? When I was growing up as a kid, I'd live 3 miles outside of the city that I would go ride my bike to every summer, and I'd ride 30 to 40 miles 3 times a week. And we were driving on a 2-lane rural highway, and the only thing I had was this fog line about that wide, right? So I get it, it's spooky, okay? But nobody driving their car is out there to meander over and hit a bicyclist. Stay to the right side of the road as much as you practically can. Pay attention to car doors as you're passing them, all of those things. Because crashes happen. I mean, we had a week where there were, I think, 2 in the same day, kids on e-bikes riding the wrong way, going through intersections, getting into crashes. I just saw a video of one not too long ago downtown. Kids are just weaving in and out of traffic, and one of them goes left to center and takes on the front end of a SUV. Fortunately, the kid was all right for the most part, but pretty banged up. Everything happens very quickly. Okay. I mean, every mile an hour you're traveling 1.5 times in distance, roughly. Okay. So if you're doing 10 miles an hour, you're going 15 feet per second. You're doing 20, you're traveling 30 feet per second. And for somebody just new to the transportation world, that's a lot. And these things are outfitted with bicycle brakes. And some of these can do 40 to 60 miles per hour on bicycle brakes.
Which means they don't stop as quickly?
They don't stop well enough. There's a lot of heat that goes into that. And brake fluids get hot, discs get hot, pads get hot, stuff stops working. Like, there's a lot in it, So just know what your kids should be riding. Make sure that they're designed appropriately for the speeds they can travel. And then just become educated and make sure that your kids are safe. I mean, and that's what we're here for. We've gone down that rabbit hole. We want to make sure that everybody's educated safely. They're riding safely. They're following all the rules of the road that they should and need to. And then they just take that out into the real world and practice appropriately.
Before we wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to add on this topic?
No, just safety, safety, safety. Wear the proper gear, ride the proper way, stay on the streets that you can. Don't be out on the freeway doing wheelies for your Instagram pages, because we've seen that stuff too. Just ride safe, be smart, make good decisions, be careful.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
That wraps up our episode today. You can learn more on this topic at CityofVentura.ca.gov/ebikes. Listen to this anywhere you find podcasts. We're also on YouTube. Thanks so much. Bye.